So thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Kelsey and I'm with the Fort Vancouver Regional Libraries, and we're really happy to be hosting the League of Women Voters Civic Education folks today. We've got Tracy Riley Kelly and Mary Schick, and they are going to be talking today a little bit. They've got a passion for voting, and we're really excited to have them here to share that with you. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over because they've got all the great information. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm Mary Schick, and I'm going to start out our presentation and later on hand it over to Tracy, but we'll both be here for any questions for you. And I will also say, Tracy and I are a little bit of numbers people, so we might, and my background's in information technology, so we might geek out on you occasionally, but we'll try not to. Anyway, thank you and welcome. And feel free to put your questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat for your questions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for our presentation. Can everybody see that? Teresa, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so tonight we're talking about the primary and why your vote matters. What can I tell you about the primary? So we have a primary election coming up on August 2nd, and expect your ballots to arrive in the next week. The ballots actually are dropping tomorrow. We're going to address three key topics ahead of that August 2nd primary. One, what's new in voting this year for residents of the state of Washington, why your vote matters, and how it matters even more in a primary. And what I mean by matter in this case is how much more power you have, and that's a reason you should be voting. Traditionally, in what we call a midterm election or an off-year election, the August primary only has about 25 to 35% of voters, actually registered voters who vote. So your vote is going to matter even more. And then later, I'll turn it over to Tracy Riley Kelly, who's going to tell us how to find reliable sources of information before you cast your ballot. So the Washington, it's a primary and a special election this year, this in August. The special election includes pieces like levies and other matters for the La Center School District. Ridgefield School District has a levy on this ballot, as well as the Clark and Cowlitz Fire has an EMS levy on the August 2nd ballot. If you don't receive your ballot, as I said, they're dropping tomorrow. If you don't receive it by July 21st, please contact the Clark County Elections Office at 564-397-2345, and we'll put that in the chat. The reason you may not receive your ballot is people forget to tell the elections office that they've moved or their address has changed. We want to make sure that it gets to the right address because your ballot is important, and it's based, the content of your ballot is based on your residential address. And this year it's also based on your age, and you'll see that in a second. So what's the primary piece of this? We call it a primary election. The primary is when we take a lot of candidates and for a particular office, and we narrow down the field for each office to 2, and then in the general election in November, you vote for those 2 individuals and vote between those 2 individuals. It's kind of like going to Baskin Robbins and you've got all those 31 flavors. Well, that's what you get in a primary. You get a lot more choices. You know, you can get chocolate or vanilla, but this way you get, maybe I want some rainbow swirls in it or something. You've got a lot more choices, and you might find candidates that are much more in alignment with your beliefs in a primary than you will in the general, but eventually things, you know, will change and narrow up. So please do a lot of investigating in that primary for the candidates. For instance, the Washington, our Senate position, that's Senator from Washington, Patty Murray, her seat is up for election. And there, last I checked, there were 18 candidates for that, the running in that, for that position. There are 8 candidates running for the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State, if you'll recall, oversees our election process. So there's a lot of people and a lot of different views you can check out. And it's much better to have all those choices of flavors, of ice cream flavors, than just having the 2, chocolate and vanilla. most surveys that we see, most people aren't a Republican or a Democrat. They aren't on the right or the left. They're somewhere in the middle. They're somewhere in the moderation or the combination of like that chocolate and vanilla with maybe a few little swirls of chocolate in there and some nuts. So, and I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, so the election is August 2nd. As I said, again, 24 to 36% of the voters turn out. So you have a much better chance. Your vote's going to weigh even more because there are only 24 to 36% of the registered voters showing up for the election. What do I mean by that? If you had a homeowners association, you had 100 people in your homeowners association who are voting on a new president of the homeowners association, but only 25 of them show up to vote. That means if you wanted something to pass, all you have to do is your vote plus 12 other people's votes, which would be 13, which would be half of the people who actually, so that's 13, which is half of one more than half of the people you need to pass something for that. Let me explain that to you again. So if you want your candidate to win in that homeowners association vote, you get your vote and then convince 12 of your friends to vote for that person. So you all of a sudden you've got 13 votes and you're going to win because that's 13 out of the 25 people who are voting. So you've got over half the people voting for your candidate. That isn't too tough to get. So your vote means a lot more in a primary. It has a lot more power the less people that are voting. Why does voting matter? Oh, excuse me. Let's talk about who the League of Women Voters are. We're a nonpartisan grassroots organization who's working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. And if you see here, our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. We never oppose or endorse parties or candidates. We study issues from all sides. And once we reach a consensus on our position or on an issue, the League may advocate for that position. And currently, the issues that we're studying, tops on our list would be climate change, healthcare, and voting rights. Now let's talk about voting. What is voting? It's basically how we decide together about laws that make sure we're safe, that everyone's treated fairly, and that taxpayer money is spent wisely. And then the elections are the process of when we as voters are asked to decide a course of action or to choose a leader who will make decisions on our behalf. We talk about the power of your vote. Do you know in 2004, in the governor's race in the state of Washington, Christine Gregoire won the election by only 133 votes. That means if you had 12 friends who you convinced to vote for Dino Rossi, her opposition, and they convinced 12 of their friends, that'd be 144 votes. If that many more people had voted and voted for him, they would have won the election because Christine only won by 133. So your vote really does matter. Do you know in 1920, when women won the right to vote, it was the last state to ratify that 19th Amendment to the Constitution was Tennessee. And in Tennessee State House, they only won by one vote. And the story goes that that one vote was by a 24-year-old representative who shortly before he voted changed his mind because he received a note from his mother. It'd be interesting to see what was in that note, but that was only one vote they won, that Tennessee ratified the 19th Amendment in their state.
His mother mentioned our leader, founder, Carrie Chapman Catt, in that note.
Imagine, Tracy, today if they had texting, the emojis that would have been in that note from the mother. Okay. Why is voting hard even in Washington? We say it's so simple, but it isn't sometimes. It feels like it's just overwhelming to us. And we're hoping tonight's presentation will give you a few tools and ways to make it easier for you to vote or feel like you're more engaged in the process. We have more elections in the United States than other nations do. You may not realize, but there've already been a few special elections earlier this year. for like Ridgefield and Battleground School District. It may have not affected you personally. You may have not gotten a ballot, but there are elections going on all the time, it seems like. And until recently, there's been very limited civics education in Washington state schools. That changed when our legislature decided that civics education is too important, and it's now a requirement for a 1/2 credit civics course for high school graduation in the state of Washington. That became effective with the school year 2021, 2020 to 2021. That each school district that operates a high school must provide a mandatory 1/2 credit standalone course in civics for each high school student. So it is a standalone course. It used to be civics education was just part of US history or a social studies class. So we're seeing an uptick in education across the nation. We hope will be the trend. Researching candidates and issues is time consuming, and sometimes it can be really boring, and getting it all from advertising is not the way to get it, because it's one-sided. And the league sponsors candidate forums, and there are other tools we'll talk to you about tonight on how you can do your research for it. We're in the Portland media market, so sometimes it's very confusing. When I told friends I was doing this presentation tonight on primaries, they said, wait, we just had a primary in May. And I tried to explain to them, no, that was Oregon that had a primary, to which I also got back a response, well, I'm going to vote for Betsy Johnson for governor anyway. First of all, we don't have a race for governor this year in our state. Betsy Johnson is running for governor in Oregon. So it's just the media is right here. We don't see the media presentations from the rest of our state. So it can be confusing. And the other thing is people don't talk about voting because we just don't want to argue about politics. There's been enough of that anxiety from politics in the past 4 to 6 years. So people definitely are worried. What we suggest instead, and we use this with high school students and those basically under the age of 18, even some who can't vote. One thing we suggest is that you hold a ballot party, and you can do it online, such as or use a web tool such as a Zoom connection to get your friends together, or just invite them over to your back deck to share a beverage and maybe a light meal or something. And what a ballot party does is you bring out the ballot and educate your friends on how to vote. You're not telling them who to vote for, just how to vote. Here's what comes in your ballot, and there's a secrecy envelope. Here's a place to sign your name, and make sure that you do sign your name, because some ballots do end up at the elections office where we're just in a hurry and we forget to sign. But just remind your friends of those things and include your phone number on the envelope, because if the elections office has any kind of questions about your signature there, they can quickly call you, and it's a quick way to get a hold of you and get that signature taken care of. You can also explain to your friends other parts of what the elections office does for you and you can learn that yourself by going to the Clark County elections site, which is lwvclarkcounty.org. And there's a little video, I think it's about less than 5 minutes, called Billy the Ballot, which takes you through the life cycle of a ballot from the time it was printed to the time that votes are tabulated. It'll make you feel a lot more comfortable about our election system. And sharing that information with your friends is really important. It's not telling them who to vote for, it's telling them what the process is and getting them out there to vote. We want more people to vote. Your voices should be heard. So who's eligible to vote this year in the 2022 primary? It's a little bit different than it has been before. You still need to be a citizen of the United States and a legal resident of the state of Washington for at least 30 days before the election. But it's always been you need to be 18 years old by election day. This year, there are going to be certain things on the ballot that 17-year-olds can vote for. So if you have a 17-year-old in your household, they may very well get a ballot. It'll look slightly different than yours. And if you're 17, the rule is if you're 17, but you will be 18 by the general election, which is November 8th, then you will get a ballot. It's a trimmed down version, but it'll include things like probably Patty Murray's Senate seat, because you'll be voting eventually for that position in the general election. So here they have a chance to vote in the primary on that, which narrows it down into the general election. So But as I said, their ballots will look slightly different. So anyone who's going to turn 18 by November 18th and is November 8th and is a registered voter will get the ballot this year. The other thing is, it's to register to vote, you must be not under the supervision of the Department of Corrections because of a felony conviction, but it used to be, or under community supervision. That's no longer the case. If you're convicted, you can read the note down there, effective January 1st, 2022. If you have any questions on that and how it's more open for persons who have been under the jurisdiction of the Department of Corrections and confined in prison, please see the elections office or call them, that number that we gave you. It's in the chat. So who's registered to vote in Washington? This is where we geek out a little bit. It's just interesting to show you who is registered to vote and what the demographic breakdown is. Female to male is an example. So there's about 5 million people who are registered to vote in the state of Washington right now. It's interesting that the population of Washington, female to male, is only different. If you see down the far right-hand corner, it's 50.1% female to 49.9% male, which is just a 0.2% difference. Yet the registering to vote is 3% different. There are 3% more females registered to vote than there are males. And I'll keep this slide up here for a few seconds longer if you want to take a look at, age groups and such. Today, there's almost 5 million people registered to vote in Washington state. But, why do the numbers change? Why do they fluctuate? People die, people move in and out of the state, and approximately 94,000 people in Washington state turn 18 each year. So the Secretary of State tries to keep up on that information, getting those of deceased people from the Department of Health, as well as the Social Security Administration. And then they compare these lists to the voter registration list. And that's why the numbers change. So primary election voter turnout. And you'll hear numbers, and I said to you, Clark County says we traditionally have in the August primaries 24 to 36% voter turnout. Well, you need to be aware of statistics, and when you're hearing what percentage of people are voting, and you'll see what's called a VEP, which is the voter eligible population, and the registered voter turnout, because it's different. If you notice how many people, we talked about what it takes to be eligible to vote, 18 and over, in this case 17, because it's a primary and you need to be a US citizen, et cetera, et cetera. So they've taken in Washington state, and these were in primary elections, primary presidential years, and said, all right, so in 2020, there were 5.4 million who were actually eligible to register to vote or eligible to vote, but only 4.6 million actually registered to vote. So we did have, of the people registered, people eligible to vote, we are doing pretty well in this state. We've got, 80% generally in those years who actually registered to vote. But what actually turns out, if you look at the fourth column, yay, we're all happy that in 2020, 54.4% of the people voted in that primary. But if you look at it, it's only really 46% of the people who are actually eligible to vote that turned out. So most of the statistics you're going to hear are the percentage of people that voted in an election. They're going to tell you the percentage of people that voted based on those who are registered, but there's still that gap between who is eligible to vote and who actually registers to vote. So time to get out to your friends and tell them, come on, you guys, get out there and register to vote, and then vote. So in the August primaries, we said, we want you to let your voice be heard. This, you'll see the August primaries. These were in non-presidential years. Well, 2020 is a presidential year, but just looking over the past 4 years of the percentage of people in Clark County who were registered and voted, still, 24%, that's not a big number. but it does give you in your ballot more power because you don't have as many people voting against. And you can see like the city of La Center position. This is just an example that we pulled up from a vote last year where they were pretty darn close on the ballot. But, you know, if you just, you know, had 50 friends or 10 friends who told 10 friends kind of want that kind of thing, or even 10 friends who told 5 friends to vote for the candidate you wanted, these are so close and the numbers are so low that you could easily influence an election. We at the League of Women Voters want to hear from more voters. So the League's mission, and that's why we're here today, to encourage you to encourage your friends to vote.
Mary, there's a question. Are those statistics from presidential voting? So do you want to go over which years you're talking about right now?
These right here were the August primary, which means it wouldn't have been the presidential primary. It would have been just the primary that we hold in August, because our presidential primary, I believe, was in May. That changes around. Depends what the RNC and the DNC decide. But yes, these numbers here are not from the presidential primary. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Pam, go ahead.
The question would be for the previous slide. Yeah, that one.
My understanding is that that was for the actual presidential election. Yes.
Okay. I was just curious because even when you compare, I mean, if it was for the presidential election, 2016 over 2020, to see that big of an increase in BEP turnout as well as registered voter turnout.
Mary, you want to mention the motor vehicle?
Yeah, and it did happen during that time, I believe, that it became easier for people to register in the state of Washington, because you can register at the DMV office, and there's apps you can go online and register. So that's really helped too. Plus 2020 was an exciting political year, and it really got people's attention. And we were kind of locked into a pandemic, so we know voter turnout increased.
Yeah, okay. I guess I kind of looked at the numbers and maybe geeked out a little bit with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. So let's talk here about 5 ways voting is unique in the state of Washington. And I will turn this over and say, actually, or add to it, it's 5 ways voting is easy in the state of Washington. As we said, voter registration, you can easily do it online. And you can do it online, by the way, for the primary up till July 25th. After July 25th, between July 25th and August 2nd, you can still register to vote or update your voting, but you need to do it in person at the elections office, Clark County Elections Office on 14th and Franklin in Vancouver. So you can do it online up until the 25th. You can do it through the Department of Motor Vehicles. And then you can also scan the QR code that we have right there on the screen. You could easily just scan that and it'll take you to a site where you can register to vote, or there still is a paper form that you can use. And we also make it easier by having the vote by mail process. The fact that our elections are 100% vote by mail does make it easier. I take my ballot, open it up, quickly go through the things and the candidates I know and the issues I know that I want to vote for one way or the other, and then come back to it later after I have a chance to research for the other candidates. Just don't forget to get that ballot in the mail and postmarked by August 2nd, or we even recommend that you use the ballot boxes that are spread throughout the county, the ballot drop boxes. We also in the state of Washington, offer a voter's guide. It's both online, and you probably received a paper copy of it this week. Note that there are only about 10 states in the United States, 10 states in the country that offer a full voter's guide as comprehensive as the one that we offer. So we are very lucky for that. We also do not require that, the state of Washington does not require you to have a party affiliation when you register to vote. So you can vote for candidates outside of your party in a primary. One exception of that is the presidential primary, but because that's regulated at a different level in our state. So it does, those are things that make it easier. They're unique in the state of Washington, and we find that it makes it easier to vote and can bring in more voters, hopefully. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. She's going to talk about the top 2 primary. Thank you, Tracy.
Great. Thanks, Mary. Mary, do you want to go to the next slide? So let's just talk about primaries. And we feel like this is an important slide because we do primaries a certain way in Washington state, and other states will do it differently. So when we hear media, sometimes we hear this or that, right? And so this is why we want to talk to you. Even our sister state of Oregon does things differently. And one of the things that Mary and I talk about is that, in fact, we might have thought that there was an election in May, right? Because our media from Portland talked all about candidates. Ours is in August. Okay, so there are open primaries, and an open primary is when a voter will cast a vote in a primary and listen to how honorably we do it, regardless of political affiliation. In other words, in an open primary, and you see that we have those in Washington state, you do not need to say what party you belong to. And indeed, you could vote for an entirely different party in the primary, and should you desire to do so, you could vote for a separate party in your November ballot. Closed primaries are only when people, registered voters, are part of a political party prior to the primary. So this is when you only receive a ballot that's with a party that you have formally stated is the one that you belong to. And there are certain ones that are semi-closed, hybrid, but what we, of course, want to say then is we have open primaries in Washington state. Next slide. So again, you know, we have the open primary, so there's no political affiliation. And we also have a very special way of voting. Not all states do it. Ours is called the top 2 primary. And in fact, it was passed through initiative in 2004, and it was passed by almost 60%. You know, and like voting by mail, that we like voting the way that we do in the state of Washington. So, you know, you can choose amongst all these candidates, just as I was saying. We may see their candidacy, their political party on their statement on the ballot. It may be on there. And when in the next couple of things that we do, I'm also going to show you places where you can see different parties that people belong to. So if, by the way, you were thinking, for example, in the state of Washington, there are only 2 parties, we're actually going to discover that there are quite a few new parties that have come amongst our people. So the 2 candidates then who receive the most votes will move on to the general election. Next slide. So this bears to mind the question, could a race include 2 candidates who prefer the same party? And the answer is yes. The candidates in each race who advance to that will be the ones who receive the most votes, and sure, they possibly could be members of the same party. And, you know, I'm going to now start talking to you about some of the tools that you can find in order to cast a vote, but also nonpartisan. There are nonpartisan candidates, and they are going to, some of them will appear in the primary also. So there are a whole number of positions, we will talk about this, that are nonpartisan, and part of the what's new is what's new in Clark County, because, you know, we had the charter. We did a review of the charter. There were a number of things that we voted on that the Charter Commission sent to us last November, and one of them was to create more nonpartisan positions. You know, I can't say too many times that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. And so we really like the idea that a number of these positions are nonpartisan. We think that serves people better. So I am now going to talk to you about some of these. This is also a good point right now. If anybody had any questions, I'm just going to pause for a minute. You could put it in the chat or you could unmute yourself and shout it out. Well, okay. I am going to start my share. So here we are on the Clark County election site. And you could get on, and Mary will put in the chat, and we will put some of the links that we're going to talk about. But right now, let's talk about them, and then you will see them. The elections webpage that we have in Clark County is nothing short of extraordinary. And by just even, you could Google it, of course, and it'll come up immediately, elections, Clark County. But the other thing is just Clark Votes is a way that you can get onto our election site. So I want to show you this, and I want you to have as much fun as I do going all around this site with so many interesting things to see. So let's look over on the left side and look at what kind of assets there are if we talk about voter resources. And everybody is seeing my slide, seeing the elections, and we see that, wow, there are all kinds of things and resources that we have here in Clark County. I'm also going to click on one that I think is kind of interesting for you, and that is, look at this. What if you wanted to look up the results of the election? You didn't want to wait for your radio, or you didn't want to wait for the next day or whatever. Do you know that you can go on to this? So what I clicked on was election results and archives. If you wanted to look up another election, you could look, they're all on here if you wanted to see what they are. And so one of the things that is quite interesting to me now that I know this is on election day, when the polls close at 8 o'clock, I go ahead and go onto this election site right after 8, and they start publishing it immediately. Now, also on the election site is something that is a very, very important link. So I've gone back onto the elections webpage. I'm going to have to remember not to make this dizzying for you as I go into different spots. But as we're looking here, do you see that there is a large icon that says Vote WA on the right side of this site? If I was to click this, and I'm going to pretend that I did, this is where I would go. So I'm gonna show you that this, interestingly, by the way, is my special site. So when I went onto the Vote WA site, it asked me to put my name, and it asked me to put my birth date, and then you scroll down a little bit and you submit, and it's really quite wonderful because this is personalized just exactly for me. And it says everything about me, and when it's the elected officials, they're Tracy's elected officials. It gives all kinds of information here. And I'm going to jump over right away to the voter's guide. Now, this voter's guide is also helpful to us, right? When we talk about what are we voting on, and did you receive yours in the mail? So I want to just mention the voter's guide for a minute. So are you like me? I went ahead and opened that voter's guide and started reading about candidates right away. Also, if you're like me, shucks almighty, it turns out that when I was looking for my voter's guide for my talk today, I don't know where it is, and I had recycling on Tuesday. So I was very worried about whether it went into the recycling bin. No matter, I liked the printed version. I might go by the elections bureau. If I just went to the election site, I could actually get my own. But I also have this wonderful voter's guide, which is right here on Vote.wa. And I want to tell you that on the screen that we're looking at, before we look at the voter's guide, this just reminded me that over on the left-hand side, where there are a number of links and it tells you all kinds of wonderful things, it has one that says ballot status. So when you cast your vote on that primary, after you cast it, you can look to see whether that's been received and whether it has been processed. So there'll be two different pieces of information that you will get. One of them will be that you are going to look to, you want to make sure that your vote was received, right? And you'll actually be able to see that, and it'll tell you that pretty early on. You won't be able to see that your vote is cast until they actually begin to process the elections, and they will not process anything until after 8 o'clock on the night of the election. I also want you to notice ballot drop boxes and voting centers, and we have so many of them. I think we've got like 16 of these all over our county, and you vote until 8 o'clock at night. And if you drive to your ballot box center, it will be open until 8 o'clock. And I've even learned that the people who are in line, they start monitoring it. And if you have been in line and are gonna, they will take your ballot. So look for those ballot drop boxes. Some states don't have ballot drop boxes, so we're pretty proud of what we've got. All right, let's talk about what you're gonna do with this tool that I am showing you. We can click on these, okay? And we can find out what's going on. And when we were talking about what is important in this election, there are special things that also are in these primaries, and we have two special ones that are of great interest. Now, if you were like me and you went into your Vote.wa, it would list the measures that you vote on for you. Remember, this is the customized Tracy version. And I want to mention this to you because there are more levies than what you see on the screen. I happen to live in Fire Protection District number 6, and there is a levy on that. You probably live in another fire protection area, and when you see it on your Vote.wa, this is what's so good about it, right? It will come up. But there's a really important thing for everyone to vote on coming up in primaries that is even of greater impact than the primary people might even know. This is about body cameras. Now, you also might say, wow, there's a lot of words on here, and not one of them, Tracy, says body camera. But in fact, actually, if we look at the bottom of all of the legalese here, it says we will use our revenue share for public safety and criminal justice purposes, and then also increase staffing for the sheriff's office. So this is a kind of thing that you, the citizen, will go ahead and decide if this is a good idea for you or not. Okay, one of the things that is very interesting, we've got federal candidates, statewide candidates, legislative candidates, county candidates. Let's just take a little quick look here. And I want to tell you, look at this. Oh my goodness, federal senator, boom, 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 boom. Wow, a lot of these people. And down here, we also have Jamie Herrera Butler, Chris Bird. You know, this list of people I didn't endorse. Jamie, she's just on the congressional thing. Remember, we don't endorse anybody with the League of Women Voters. Now, I want to mention something that I felt upon reading the voter's guide. First of all, if we went out and had a beer or a glass of wine or something like that, I might use more colorful language to describe something, to tell you that some of these candidates, boy, read this voter's guide. I didn't understand before this time reading the voter's guide that one thing that citizens do, or at least they do in the state of Washington, because there are 18 of them running for this, they have, some of these people have what's colloquially known as an axe to grind. And I think what happened to them is something happened, and you'll know, because by the way, this is what they say in their voter's description. And rather than saying, I believe in some opinion about taxes or some opinion about public safety or some governmental thing about the Supreme Court or something like that. A lot of times these people actually have a more biographical statement, and the biographical statement includes how they were injured by a governmental system. And so that, what I think happens to people is they feel like they've gone to the highest level of appeals. They're not getting the help and answer that they want. And this isn't probably where I would go, but for some of these people, they decide, I think I'm going to run for senator. And maybe if I run for senator, my issue will become prominent. But what we would like to say at the League of Women Voters is we think that what you really want to do in looking at these is looking at what do these people represent? Who are they? What are they about? Remember, I mentioned a couple of things that we care about, taxes and public safety being two. And so, you know, you really want to look at all of their bios. Now, remember, as we were saying, in this primary, we didn't have to declare what party we were part of. And so look at that, we get all kinds of people. I noticed that a number of them prefer the independent party. And so I think what they're saying by that is that they don't have a party affiliation. And then some of them have new parties that I had not heard about. Here's a person, I don't know if you have heard, the Socialist Workers Party is a regular party. It appears on the ballots. And then there's here is a new party that I had not heard about before, the JFK Republican Party. And there was another one on here that I thought was a new, Trump Republican Party. So I think those people want to differentiate themselves, and they have chosen that. We also have a very important election with a number of candidates in our congressional district number 3, and representatives vote. We vote on them every 2 years. We have a number of statewide candidates. Now, elections are very important, aren't they? And the person in the state who is our elections, kind of like main supervisor, would be the Secretary of State. And you can go on to the Secretary of State. Again, Washington has a great site there with really a lot of information about voting. And we see that there are a number of interesting other parties that we might not have heard about. Maybe you have. I had not heard of the Union Party. And there is also one, the America First Party. So people can create a new party affiliation when they're running for this. Now, here are the legislative district. And the other thing about the vote is how customized it is. So you may be voting for people in other in your district. And so other things are going to show up. All right, now I'm going to go out of here and I'm going to move around, and I want to ask, are there any questions right now? Is there anything that you'd like to, you can just break in here. Is there anything that you're interested in about learning about the Vote.wa platform? All right. Well, here's where I'm going to go first. So I went back to the election site. And on this election site, on that menu, remember that there was a menu on the side? On that menu, there is a maps option. Well, we want to tell you that if there is one thing that is really what's new happening at this primary season, and that is different legislative districts.
Tracy, that's perfect, because a question did just come in. Is there a map on the voter site that will show the boundaries of the 3rd district?
Yes.
Okay.
So we
So we
really
will
want to
address that.
talk to
Thanks.
you about that. I'm gonna tell you that currently the third district is Skamania, Clark, Howlett's, Klickitat counties. So the areas, you know, but I will, and I'm going to show you some examples of maps. But just to tell you, this is a very great place where you can see a lot of maps, and we are going to look at some maps. There was a census in 2020. Every 10 years in the United States, we have a census and we reapportion. I want to mention just a quick civics thing that I read in the New York Times today that made me think also about mentioning this to you. When we decided in the United States to have, I think it's 435 members of the House of Representatives, this is in the early part of the 20th century when this was determined that 435 was the right amount. Well, guess what? The United States has grown since then, substantially. So the representation of the number of people per state that we are allocating on is really getting off. And when we see, you know, so remember that if we're going to add, and Oregon was added a new district, right? But when Oregon added, that meant that somebody else had to leave, and that turned out to be California, and so lose one. Excuse me. So I think that's a powerful argument, and it's something I just want to mention in civics that I think we should really continue to look into, and I'm sure the League of Women Voters has an opinion on this, but maybe we should expand the House of Representatives so that those representatives are not having an ever increasing number of people they represent. What happened after the 2020 election, census, excuse me, in the state of Washington was that new maps needed to be created, because in the state of Washington, we have districts and they have approximately, I think I knew it and now I'm forgetting it, so I'm not going to say, but they have a finite number of people who this representation is, so that we don't have more people, which used to be, by the way, in the state of Washington. There used to be that some of the districts had way more people than other of the districts. And so now it has by legislation been that they should be very true. Now there is, when the commission decides to create districts, one of the things that's most important is that they are compact and that they are contiguous. So this is a description that tells you that a rectangle or a square is a compact. The other thing is honor real geographical boundaries, not made up ones. So when we hear about gerrymandering and going out in these areas, I really want to tell you that no matter what you think about the new districts in our area, you can notice right away that the districts appear to be more compact square. The 18th district, remember I told you that I was in the 18th district, it has definitely become more compact. And the 18th district and the 17th district changed a lot. And so here is a map that I want to show you of the 17th district. Now, notice that it goes pretty far north, so I'm going south. And the geographical line, which makes sense, is the Skamania County line. So the 17th district is in Clark County, and here it is. Now you could say, and ask me a question, well, Tracy, if it's all just so rectangular and all of that makes sense, on the southwestern edge, it actually doesn't look very straight. Well, that has to do with the importance of creating equity of voters between the 49th district and the 17th district. So this is our most urban area. So what I want to tell you folks who live in the East County, you more than anyone need to go ahead and look, and this was on the election site where all these maps were, And I'm going to show you each of them, but you want to go ahead and look because things are different. And you might also say, oh, what? I live in Kalamazoo-Washougal. I thought, well, we were part of the 18th district. Well, you are not part of the 18th district. 18th district, no more. So the 18th district was one of the most out of whack districts of all of them. But I also want to notice that if we start looking, that we see, even though it's not gerrymandered, right? We've got a little bit irregular here in the north. And the other thing that I want to mention to you without showing you way too many maps is that Ridgefield, part of Battleground, Yakult, these places are now in the 20th legislative district. So they are in a completely different district. So now we're going in the 18th district and we're getting more urban here. So we're getting out of Battleground. Remember, my goodness, Ridgefield isn't in this 18th district. It is part of the 20th district. And now we are getting more urban. And the interesting reason and why this also became a little bit more of an urban district, and it now goes down to 78th Street. So 49th district, if you lived in the 49th district and lived north of 78th Street, you are now in the 18th district. If you've seen, and anybody could also say, wow, I sure have seen a lot of building around. And if we see where these borders are, we see that there are a number of differences going on. And so now I'm going to show you another map, aren't I? Is it? Have we got the 49th district here? I'm supposed to have it. Did I? Yes, I did. Wanted to make sure that it changed. Okay, so I'm doing so much with this system that it has slowed down. There we go. Okay. Now I'm showing you the 49th district. 49th district, main difference for those of you who live in the 49th district is, like I said, your district is now stopping at 78th Street. There are probably some fine points. I will tell you that, you know, at one time the I-205 was a really important demarcation of the 49th district. And so notice that that's not exactly true now. And I really want to say, I don't believe that this was gerrymandered or deal broken or anything like that. I feel like that what they did for us in our area was to make fairly fair maps. I want to ask everybody a question. Does anybody want to say like, oh, wow, Tracy, wait a minute. I want you to go back to one of these other maps because I live in that area and I want to see it. So as we're talking here about, we're going to be on this maps deal. Yes, I'm going to show you a county council map. We're on this maps right now. Would anybody like questions answered about their legislative district? Well, there is another map, and this one that I just pulled out for you is the county council map.
Tracy?
And yes?
No one has said specifically they wanted their map, but one person, Peggy C, said if district boundaries, et cetera, are redrawn, how do we know if our districts, et cetera, have changed since we don't get new voter registration cards? Or do
I love my answer for you. Remember I talked to you about how much I love that Vote.wa site and that it was the customized Tracy site. So Peggy, if you go into the Vote.wa, or if your friends or people that you speak to, the first thing that happens in Vote.wa, which I did not show you, is a place where I put in myself, who I am. And it immediately customizes it. And all the information that you will get on it will only be for you and your address and where that is. This council thing, it'll tell everything it'll tell you. It'll tell you everything accurately. Now, the other question that might come up by any of you is, again, wait a minute. Didn't I hear that there was some contention around the county council map? Well, the answer is yes, you did hear that there was some contention around the county council map. And so this is a reason why I want to endorse this site that I told you. And I am going to go back there and I'm going to remind you where it is. And we have links for all of this in the chat, which you could save, you know, and get for yourself. But this map then is, if I go on the elections map, if I go on to that thing that says district map, in that menu was the council map. And so this is the map that they are using for purposes of voting, no matter what else has been in contention. The county council maps in our area were redrawn because in the last charter that we voted, remember we voted on a number of these things and really won by large margins in this manner, which was this: shall we redraw the county council, and we elect, you know, county council representatives, and should this no longer be 4, should it become 5? Should we add a 5th? And the reason was that before, people were voting for the kind of 5th member by a separate vote that you cast for that person as chair. What the charter decided, and we voters agreed, was that it would better serve people if we had all 5 of these, and they will themselves choose who their chair is. So we've got District 5, and it is quite large, right? So District 5, the new one, it's huge in many ways. And this is, of course, the interesting thing about maps, is they are based on population. And all of the precincts and everything are in here. You could also look for a precinct map and you could see what precinct you are in. And so here's District 5, right? And it's going down. You know, if this presented the special Tracy map, it would. By the way, I want to tell you, back in my deal, it will know what district I'm going to be voting on too in the county council, and it'll be all customized for me. So remember that you learned a little bit about me, and you learned that I live in an area of the 18th district, and it's in an area of District 2. So these have been redrawn, and so this is very important, I think, for everyone. Is a good reason, and remember, you can find that on your customized site. Are there any questions about these county maps?
No, but there was one about someone wanted to see Legislative District 17, please.
Oh, they wanted to see it again? Okay, we can do that.
Well,
I've got them.
Yeah, the question came in after the last question, so they may have already seen it.
Look at, or well, they may or may not have, because here it is. I think we actually began with the 17th district. And so the 17th district goes on. So its east side margin is the Skamania County line. That's why it's so very straight. And it has the geography of Yale, right, in the Lewis River and everything affecting it. And look at that, it skirts, I hadn't really paid attention to this, but look at how close Yakult is to the 20th district. So by the way, I didn't pull up the 20th district, but this one tells you where the 20th district is, by the way. You know, that I said to you, if you lived in Ridgefield, La Center, or Yakult prior to this time, you were in the 18th district, you are no more. But I did not realize that the 17th district comes so close to Yakult. So I imagine that there are people with a Yakult address, right, who are in the 17th district. And this is also going to be true for this difference of battleground, and that now the battleground is going to be in the 18th district. Now, I'm happy to show this, and so my question is, are we seeing just what we want to see for the 17th district right now? Question. You could unmute yourself and ask it too. It's actually kind of good too, because you notice there's this other map in the left-hand corner here that I think you're seeing. I'm seeing it on my screen, and it kind of shows that. All right. Now, right on this slide, remember that one of those, and you have a direct link. So the customizable site that has the voting guide, it tells me exactly what district I live in, exactly who my candidates are. It's a Tracy site, knows everything about me. It's great. Do you know that the Tracy site has I forgot to tell you this. The Tracy site lists every election that I have voted on for frigging years, folks. I thought that just totally blew my mind. It didn't just say what all of those elections were. It didn't say how I voted, but it was a record of all of my voting. So be proud of yourself. I was proud of myself when I looked. So again, this is the Vote.wa, which you just want to go on and you'll just be like, I am amazed that it is so cool. And then this one that we're looking at right now is the election site. That was Clark Votes, that was elections. So this, if you go to this one, it's also, you're sort of like one-stop shopping center, because you could either go directly to Vote.wa, you know, you don't have to get it on this site. And it even, and by the way, it even has precincts on it. You could even see, but we're not going to look at that. So we're on the Vote.wa different site. Remember, wow, on the primary, I can go look at the election results. If I want to see whether I cast my vote, that's on the Vote.wa. If I cast my vote.
And Tracy, let me interject
yeah.
something. The first time I looked at my previous voter registration, I was really disappointed in myself till I realized, no, there wasn't always a ballot for me. I didn't have a ballot in every election that happens. There are special elections where you may not get a ballot. I don't live in the battleground school district, so when they have a levy up and that's the only thing on the ballot, I won't get it. So don't feel too disappointed if it looks like you missed a few elections.
Yeah, and again, if you're saying to yourself, so isn't this another plug for why this Vote.wa is so awesome? Because it really does know what's happening at your address. You know, I'm teasing and saying it's a Tracy site, although of course it is, because it's got my all my votes. Not what they are, remember, not what they are, just that I did. And so this is on the elections. And I want to also remind everybody, I really like this election results thing. And you'll be amazed if you go in there at 8 o'clock on the 2nd of August, you'll be able to find this. And even if you were a candidate, there'd be all sorts of resources. But I don't want to go on and on and on, but I'm going somewhat on and on and on. Here is that Billy the Ballot. The Greg Kimsey is a great friend to the League of Women Voters. We feel that he's done a great job. He has someone opposing him, and so we don't take a stand on Greg's election. Here are also some other things and places we could look up all those ballot sites. It's absolutely amazing. I also have to tell you, do you know that if I went on the Vote.wa site, remember I like it because it's so customized for me. It actually has in order of how far it is from my home address where the ballot boxes are. Yeah, it says this is the closest one to you. Look at, here's election results. Man, we look at this. We mentioned that we're geeks at the League of Women Voters. Boy, do geeks love. And someone said, I kind of love data. And wow, can you find it? So, all right. Now, what if, though, I'm going to leave this site, folks. I'm going to announce this, but I could come back there. What if, in fact, it was a little bit different? Oh, by the way, I'll go back on this one. Is this one only my, okay, this is Vote.wa. And I don't care whether, don't write down my address and come to my home. You know, here it is. It's on here. There were some things that I did that now that I'm in here, I'm going to go in here. This is the League of Women's Vote 411 site. And when I plugged my address in, it also customized just for me, right? Isn't this the wonderful news about where we are? And look at this, it even has the registration deadlines. And so right now on the corner here, I'd also like to mention to you, remember that if you know someone who has, needs to get registered, they can do this. Although the other thing is, it's so great in our site when people apply for licenses, we get entered as voters. It's also one of the kind of the interesting things when people say, oh, I don't want to vote because then I'll be called for jury duty. Right? Question, Tracy, doesn't that mean I'll be called for jury duty? Listen, guess what? You'll be called for jury duty on the basis of your driver's license, even beyond your voter's registration in the state of Washington. So, oh, it's good, so many good reasons to. Now, what this is more important for people who live in other states, not the state of Washington, because it is the League of Women Voters Vote 411 voter guide. Why is it more important if you're not in Washington? Well, we at the League of Women Voters think this is a dandy site. So we want to tell you it's important in every state. But in our state, we have voters guide, and we just have gone through this, haven't we? Oh, did I? Yeah, I mentioned the body cameras. I was worried for a minute. I didn't mention body cameras. So this one is great for people in other states who have no such a thing as a voter's guide. But let me tell you one way that sometimes it's not as good. So here we got a whole lot of people here, and I want to tell you why I'm going to choose. It's not exactly going to be random. Our current senator is Patty Murray. So I'm going to open up this site of our current senator, and we could look down here and find out all the information. Look at this, you know, how should we participate in global economy? They haven't responded. What specific ideas do you have? Look at, wouldn't this be great if Patty had responded? How would you strengthen the national economy? We're the League of Women Voters, right? So we are very, very awesome. And the candidate has not responded. But I want to mention something here before we decide that there is something wrong with that candidate. I also happen to know that Tiffany Smiley is recommended by the Republican Party, and I just mentioned a Democrat. So that's the reason I'm randomly choosing. I'm not randomly choosing. I want you to see that even the top candidates turn out in Washington state who have not filled out this. Now, we would like them to fill it out because I want to tell you about a difference between these questions here. What I'd be as specific ideas do you have to facilitate the ability of major parties to discuss and compromise for the good of the nation? I want to know what my candidate believes on this. But what I want to tell you is no one has responded. So it doesn't matter. I could go back here and pick out another one. Let me see. Let me find someone who said they were an independent. So I'm very fair here. Okay, so here is a gentleman whose name is Naz Paul. He has not responded because what I want to tell you is don't make a judgment about any of these people. None of them have responded. And it's not even that we're in the process of getting this filled. So I don't want to say 100% that neither Patty Murray or Tiffany Smiley or Naz Paul have responded to this. I believe that they're still filling this out. Imagine the gigantic job it is for every candidate all over. So we really, really recommend this site Vote 411, but it's less lively for you to be making your decision. Remember that the ballots will be mailed out tomorrow. We want to remind you of that. If you do not receive your ballot, you want to contact the elections department, and we're going to put all that information. Mary's going to copy it and put it in the chat for you. So this is a great site, and we really do think it's a great site because it would be better, wouldn't it, if they answer all these questions? That makes it a good reason why. So then what we say is, well, we are wealthy in the state of Washington because we have so many resources, right? We're lucky beyond belief in our state. Now, Judy Zeider has a chat here, and she said, I just went into it and it has me down for the wrong council, but the site just went live. If we spot issues, who do we notify? Well, that is absolutely for sure that we want to notify someone, because it's only as good as the information that it gets. And I can also tell you that that council was so complicated because it was in contention. So what we want to say to the Vote 411 site is that we happen to know that on our own election site, it is the right one. And how do you do this? Well, I have to reveal to you that I don't know how to contact Vote 411 directly to tell them about this, but we do want you to know that the League of Women Voters is on it. And I feel like someone on this call, I knew it. Guess what? We are so honored here that our president, Nancy Halverson, is on this Zoom. Nancy, what's the answer to that? How am I going to get in touch with someone? Because I want that site to work and be right.
Okay, this came up with another member today. So this was on District 5, new, and the boundaries were not final until almost the last minute. The elections office mailed updated voter registration cards after the state districts were finalized. Then they had to mail some people cards again when the county districts were changed late, and that was right before the filing date in May. The final District 5 map is on the elections page, which you have referenced. There's also phone and email contact info for the elections office on that page, which you have referenced. So we've also had a candidate whose district changed from 2 to 5 just before filing. So there's a number of people who've been caught up in this, but contact the elections office. And Vote 411 just went online just a few days ago. And so because our districts change so late in the process, it is taking a little bit to work out all the kinks. But your correct information is at the elections office.
So, yeah, and we have those tools. Nancy, so let's say I'm a citizen and now I care that I've discovered an error in the Vote 411 system. Who could I, how could we get in touch? How could we get in touch with Vote 411 to let them know?
You would contact one of the league members or myself, or the main league number or league email, lwvclarkcounty@gmail.com.
Okay, and we have information that league information came at the top of your chat, folks. So I will mention that. I want to deputize everybody, right? Systems are only as good as people are reporting that to be. So and then let's say you let us know. Oh, we would be on top of it, and we would have ways. You know, obviously our president would have a way to be able to directly contact someone who's monitoring that. This is, again, why we're extremely lucky to live in the state of Washington, because we have the Vote WA, which is going to, you know, again, I want to wholeheartedly recommend it. The 411, they are trying to populate that for everybody in the whole United States. And so whether or not that information is entirely populated by the election, it might not be, but you have those resources. So questions, you know, we've given you quite a lot of information here and have been on for a long time. Any other questions? Is there anybody who would like to make a comment?
I need to make a comment, and that the numbers that I was talking about, by the way, were for the August primary when we were talking about the voter eligible population. And in the chat, I put the link to where you can go back on. It goes back actually to 1898 and tells you how the residents of the state of, or the voters in the state of Washington, how many voted. And anyways, that's my disclaimer. And I sent a note to Pam about that so I can clarify what happened there. We had one other, and there was a question about how do you follow the money?
Oh, somebody said, how do we follow the money? That's just sort of an open-ended question. I think you can follow the money, by the way. So I want to tell you that, remember when I got that voter's guide And I thought that I did think that the print voters guide was better than the online one. I'll tell you why. I liked having a photo. I felt like there was more information on the print voters guide. I'm not exactly sure why I had that feeling, but I did when I was reading it. But one of the things is it says endorsed by. Now, a candidate has every reason to want to tell you who they're endorsed by, because some of those endorsements, let me just jump out of the air and say, oh, by the way, I didn't show you, but we have a really important election for sheriff coming up. Nonpartisan position. There are 3 different people. And if you read about them, because I might say, wow, how do I decide on a nonpartisan, right? So then that makes it really important for me to go into that statement. And it turns out that what does happen is that you can see where people were endorsed, which would allow you to make that follow the money judgment. And so let me all right, I'm going to make one. I'm just pulling this out because I think it's an example. You know, there is the Growth Management Act, and there's a lot of things going on in our state with the Growth Management Act, right? So there is a building trades council of different kinds, right? So that building trades council probably has an opinion on that. There's an organization in our own county. It's called Friends of Clark County. It's kind of an environmental organization. So that's why endorsed by is really a great thing to do that kind of thing of follow the money. I also would tell you that my close read of the voter's guide was really interesting to me because I just learned things about people. And as I was really reading it, sometimes I could get some clues about that too. So I think that's an interesting question, right? The way people gave their narrative was follow the money in ways I could. I also want to tell you, here's an interesting thing that I thought about some of the candidates. Most candidates write it in the first person. I vote for me, Tracy. I think I want to tell you all these things. Some of them were in the third person. It was she or he. And I thought that's kind of interesting because I didn't understand why they didn't say I. Then it made me feel candidates who write in the third person and use she. It made me think like, did that person write it? Did the person who, you know what I mean, who I'm looking at? Oh, look at this. Boy, do we have it. You know, this is a top crowd here. If you check the chat, we have some pretty smart people here. So this is another moment where I have to mention to you, have you ever thought of joining the League of Women Voters? Sometimes I kind of like say that I love the League of Women Voters. It's so full of smart people. Wow. Every conversation I ever have with anybody is smart. And guess what? My colleagues are full of smart information that I didn't even know. So there is a great answer to this. And one of the people just said, Judy Zeider, thank you. And Judy is a member of the League. See, it just shows how smart she is. Has links to the Public Disclosure Commission and webpage. So guess what? Oh my God, Judy has just told us that if we go on the Public Disclosure Commission, we can look out who gave what. And then Nancy Halverson, remember, she's our president. She has just told us in the chat, Pdc.wa.gov, a place to follow campaign contributions. So who gave money to this candidate? And did they get really a lot? Right? That would also say to me, that was a really juicy contribution there. So there's a lot that you can find out online. Any more questions? Any more information from smart people?
I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, Tracy.
Yeah, not seeing any more. Well, what I want to say is we are soon to get off and end this. We at the League of Women Voters so much value that all of you are citizens and that you care about it. I bet you learned something today. And so what we would like, remember how Mary said, talk to this many people and this many people and this many people? Well, what we'd like is, I don't know, talk about the candidate of your choice. Of course, we want you to do that. But how about if you told 10 people and they told 10 people that said, oh my gosh, in Washington State, we can go onto these customized sites and we can find out all of this information, and you can too. Wouldn't that be a cool way for information to spread? So I'm Tracy Riley Kelly with the League of Women Voters, hoping you also want to join us. And I am signing off. And here's my colleague, Mary Schick.
And thank you, Tracy. And thank you, everyone who attended today. We really appreciate it. And my message is to just talk to your friends about the importance of voting. Get out there and vote yourself. Let your voice be heard. It's your chance to be a participant in our system as opposed to a spectator. Thank you very much.
We're done.
Thank you so much to both of you, and of course to the League of Women Voters of Clark County. We so much appreciate you joining us today.